Okay. We picked New Orleans for a number of reasons. One was that we didn't have a show there. But more importantly, metaphorically, we like to have our cities help tell the story. We like them to be the characters that are in there. We've talked a lot about how New York is, in many ways, we consider to be the fifth offender. Um, the characters that are in Runaways work really well in Los Angeles. The story is about diversity. It's about different neighborhoods. LA offers you that opportunity. New Orleans is a city that has constantly been forced to be reborn. And just in the last 20 years, what they've gone through between Katrina, between the oil spill, it is continually being challenged as to how to survive. And so when you take that and you then put two young people in it, in Ty and Tandy, and you have actors that are as talented as Olivia and Aubrey playing those roles, you've put now Cloak and Dagger in a world that continually challenges them in terms of their own stories, who they are, and then what they're going to be. And if you're in a city that you're not sure is going to be there tomorrow, you've already set up a world that, how do you survive? How do you make that work for yourself, not just as an adult, but as a teenager, and as a teenager growing up, present day United States?
And also with that, Freeform as a platform, does it mean it's will have a different tone?
I think all of our shows have their own tone. I think that we've really worked very hard to make sure that you're not watching the same show with a different hero in it. And so whether it's the lighter tone that's in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or whether it's the tone of Jessica Jones or it's the tone of Runaways, Cloak and Dagger has its own particular flavor. It does speak directly to the freeform audience, which tends to skew younger than a number of the other audiences that are out there. But we also find that almost everybody watches freeform. So it's not specifically because of that, but when we first started talking to freeform, we did want to specifically address the issue of what it is to be a young hero in the Marvel Universe, which is really, what is it to be a young hero anywhere? And more and more we're now seeing through social media that kids are really having a say about government policy, about what their home life should be, about what the world should look like, because they're actually looking at it going, yeah, that's great for you. We have to live here after you're gone. And that's something that's very important and something that's worth discussing, as long as you do it through the Marvel Prism, which gives you an action-adventure show, that gives you a show that has humor in it, that gives you a show that has well-drawn characters. And as I said, you know, when you've got Olivia Holt and Aubrey Joseph, that's more than half the work.
Is this series completely reinventing the Cloak and Dagger mythos?
We get asked this question a lot. I think people have to remember that Cloak and Dagger was created in the 1980s. And so in the same kind of way that when you look at the changes that were made to Iron Man, when you look at changes that are made to certain characters that worked for its time, how do we tell that story in 2018, in 2020? What makes that work? So, but the tone, the tenor, the way that they interact with each other, their powers, the look, all of those things are really important to get right. But are we moving it out of New York and the drug trade and moving it down to New Orleans and dealing with some other issues? Absolutely. And our hope is that if Cloak and Dagger were a brand new idea that happened to get created as a comic book a year ago, that they would have gone the way that we went, simply because it is true to the spirit of those characters. But by the same token, what happens to them along the way is a story that you get to watch and see it unfold.
So I'm noticing you're talking about Runaways. We have Gifted, now Cloak and Dagger, Spider-Man. All of these kind of younger heroes. Is Marvel sort of skewing towards these younger heroes now? Do you feel like it's important that these characters are starting from like their teens rather than from adulthood. Like,
You hit it exactly. I mean, when Marvel Television started out, truthfully, we were just trying to get on the air. We cheated because we went to Joss Whedon, and so we could not be more proud of the fact that Agents of Shield is now celebrating its 100th episode. But even that we looked at and went, okay, so now what's the next idea? And so the next idea was, how do we deal with the street level heroes? How do we deal with the heroes that are in the Marvel universe that don't necessarily are interested in saving the universe, but might be interested in saving the neighborhood, or in some cases themselves? And Daredevil and Iron Fist and Luke Cage and Jessica Jones fit into that world. And so then we sort of started looking around at the young heroes and how could we tell those stories? And so the Runaways at Hulu and Cloak and Dagger at Freeform were the first two that we started with. The gift of Gifted was something that Fox came to us because of the control of the X-Men. And so I think we all found that given how important young adults are, not just to the storytelling audience, but to the world around us, that yes, we wanted to have an opportunity to have those characters speak to that. And a very important story for us was when Gina first came in as our director. What she said to us was that she has two boys who said to her, why is it there's no heroes that look like us, that are young people of color, that we could look up to? Luke Cage is great, but that he's a grown man. Like, how do we find somebody that we would go to? And from that point, we just said Gina is exactly the right person to tell the story, because she is trying to speak to exactly the audience that we're trying to reach, which, by the way, doesn't exclude anyone. It doesn't say, oh, this is for teens, you're an adult, you don't want to watch the show. You'll actually get caught up in what's going on, because it's either what's happening in your life now, or it's something that happened to you before. I mean, we all had to go through that in order to get to be here. And for some of us, it was harder than others.
Recreating the mythology of Cloak and Dagger for this series.
It's an honor. It's a privilege, and it's scary as hell because you don't want to mess it up. But Marvel has been kind of fantastic in letting me take the essence of Tandy and Tyrone and really take them and kind of bring them into 2018. So it's been fun, and with actors like Olivia and Aubrey, it's been very rewarding.
I've read a lot of Cloak and Dagger and other people's stories. Is there anything in particular that you guys are pulling from, like any particular storyline or idea?
You know what? I think, the original Spider-Man stories were always good, but they were Spider-Man stories. So we looked a lot at that, the first 12 issues in particular, the limited series, which I thought was great. I mean, the idea of these two lost kids is fantastic. We took it apart, sold it for parts, moved it to New Orleans, and rebuilt it. But I think what I say about that is weirdly progressive work for its time, weirdly sexist and racist for ours, so we had to change it a little.
We've got a good start on a show with a lot of heroes in it.
Yep.
Can you talk about the difference between that and having just two core heroes?
It's kind of awesome. I feel like 2 might be my number. I feel like when you work on something like even Daredevil is challenging because you're trying to tell a Matt story first and foremost. There's something that at least works for my skill set in the sense of having this beautiful intercut. And I don't know if you guys have seen the first hour yet, but there's something we found in seeing Tandy's pain, seeing Tyrone's pain in 2 different spheres of the world, and intercutting it and making sure you understand it's of a piece. And there's just something kind of beautiful in the sense of, too, it becomes a big part of our mythology that kind of became my jam. When we were talking to Gina about directing it, she was like, oh, this is 2 damaged souls. That's totally my jam. And now I get it. It's just like, it's a great story to tell. And it allows you to be a little bit cubist in telling a character story.
So taking on more modern day themes and like applying it to the old ways of the characters.
Yep.
How challenging was that?
Sadly, a lot of it was there. I mean, you know, in the original Tyrone story, he had a stutter and was unable to stop his friend from being shot. You know, we changed that a little, but I definitely wanted to talk about police brutality, about
Yeah.
the quick trigger finger on boys in hoodies that, you know, fuck, it doesn't seem to be going away.
So unfortunately, like that's one of the things that has been very common in our modern day culture. Unfortunately, and that was one of the first things I thought of. Was like, wow, are we gonna see something like that?
Yeah.
Like, more relevant to today's youth.
Yeah, and I think I think it's something we have to deal with. I think, you know, the young boy with the hooded sweatshirt needs to kind of, he needs a hero, and we need to see ourselves in him. I think what Aubrey does in that character is amazing, and the same with Olivia. You know, this is a strongly feminist show. We're going to deal a little with opiate abuse. We're going to deal a lot with what it's like to be a woman. You know, I always talk about how Peter Parker and Tony Stark had problems, but I don't think, like me growing up, they didn't understand real problems. And so hopefully these two will just be a different kind of story.
Now, can you tell us about like the new backgrounds for Tandy and Ty for the series? It seems like very far from the original.
Yeah, it's not. Again, I wanted to keep the characters. I like the idea that they were tied together. We're gonna kind of unravel the mythology in an untraditional way over the course of the 10 episodes. But I'm trying to think of something non-spoiler that I can say.
Well, we can tell you from the trailers, it looks like Ty has a really loving family and a
Yeah.
much better life in this show than he is in the comics.
Yeah, I think that was part of it. I didn't think I should be the person to tell an inner city story, but I thought the idea of moving Tyrone to a richer, I keep calling it a gilded cage. His parents saw tragedy, and then they said, we're going to take him out of this neighborhood, we're going to take him out of this school, we're going to put him in a perfect place, but it didn't solve all his problems. So I thought that was an interesting way for someone like me to tell a Tyrone story. And Tandy, we put it on the other side. We started her off well off, but then we really wanted to take everything away from her and see how her cynicism and hope dealt with it.
They interacted with a lot of different characters in the comics, and some of those characters are currently on screen now. Is there any hope for any mixing or touching at some point?
I say a prayer often. Listen, I think Olivia and Aubrey are doing such a great job that I'm waiting for Peter Parker to call and ask them for them to show up at the beginning of the third movie. There's probably 500 lawyers that are going to call me for saying that. I think there'll be plenty of opportunities in television and film once people see what these two kids can do. Why wouldn't you want them to play in your sandbox?
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.